I'd like to call the regular December meeting of the board together. And I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda. And I move to adopt the agenda. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? First order of business is the approval of minutes of October 20th and November 17th. I'd like to do them in definitely please because I was not here at the November meeting. But I would like to make a motion to approve the October 20th regular board meeting minutes. Have a second. I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? For the November 17th, 2022 voucher meeting, I will move to approve them, but I cannot make any comments on them. Do I have a second for that? Second. Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That was quick. The next order of business is public comment on matters not on the agenda. We have any public comment? Hearing none, move forward. Correspondence, we had no correspondence this past session.
We have correspondence related to the public hearing.
Related to the public hearing, which we'll talk about in the public hearing. The next item of business is the consent agenda. I would like to pull basically everything from the consent agenda to discuss it. Stella, would you like to talk through your financial narrative?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, we did receive the treasurer's report for November. However, the county expenditure report was not yet released in time when I was preparing the financials. And the county expenditure report is what I utilize to pay bills and QuickBooks. So there would be some changes in terms of what here's another profit or loss. The other thing I'd like to make note of is in the expense category section. I mentioned that in October, we had a repair to our fire suppression system. There had been a long-standing leak, and when we had the facilities condition assessment, I'm sorry, here at this location in Jackson, the facilities condition assessment identified this as something that we should repair. And the cost point was deemed to be around $20,000 improvement. When we had this repair, the repair company determined that we actually did not need to replace the system at this point in time, and they were able to repair with installing some new gaskets. So that cost us around $1,700 versus $20,000. However, what I really want to make note of, this was not a Band-Aid repair. This was a viable solution. However, what I want to make note of is that at some point we will need to repair the system. Whether that's 6 months out, 2 years out, don't know, but I just want to make that noted. And if there are any other questions, we have gotten 2 payments now from county revenue, but we're still a little bit behind in terms of what we would have been expecting at this point.
I have a couple of questions. You created a list of capital repairs that we should prioritize. How are we doing with that list outside of this?
So one of the repairs was the cable installation. So that has been completed. That project was completed. Another item was the shed. So we now have the shed on property, and we have also, with the shed, we're no longer having the offsite storage. So we now have that savings, but that was on target. Rick, our facilities maintenance coordinator, had a target date of November, and we met that deadline a month ago, so that was great. We did have one unanticipated expense that did come out of the capital expenditure, and I just forgot what that is. I'm so sorry. There was one that was unplanned. It was not hugely expensive.
May I ask you about the shed? for a
Yes.
second? Since, we're saving money from our moving that shed on site. Was the shed moved, was the shed moved out of the capital reserve fund? Or was that done out of our operating?
It was done out of capital reserve, but we anticipate that within a couple of years, it will pay for itself versus the cost of what the monthly storage, offsite storage is.
Okay, super. I wanted to dominate this, I'm sorry, if anybody else have any questions. Terrific, how do you feel? So one of the things I saw on the personnel side is we're significantly under budget. The major one seems to be the healthcare premiums for the month, well, for the month and for the quarter. Is that what we're waiting to get to from the county, or is that we just didn't have a payment?
Yep, actually, that will show in the county expenditure report, yet to receive some of that later.
Do we have any idea yet? This is now the time that we would find out in maybe a year when our new premiums are gonna be, have we found out what the target?
We have not yet, but
I can tell you, that we have not received that information. However, we did budget contingency amount to cover. Should there be, I think we budgeted an extra 10 or 12,000 in contingency, just in case the rates did go up.
Yeah, I just having renewed my own personal insurance, I know they went up significantly. 8%, I don't know how.
I think we did budget 8% contingency.
My organization for 22%.
22.
22%.
Wow.
So
Ouch.
I'm just ready.
That's, those are the questions I have. Is
I
there
believe
any-
Mo did say that should there be a higher, that they would cover that. There would be a budget adjustment that they. That's the insurance. That's to cover the.
It's all, it's all the problems.
Right. We were, I think, one of the only departments that did budget and contingency just in case.
Excellent plan.
of our full-time staff, there are only 2 staff members who don't use money health insurance. They're on our spouses. So other than that, basically all full-time staff are rely on that.
As we don't have a complete set of financials, I will refer to the board that I think it should not include these financials for the next meeting. So when the county supplies the requisite information, I guess is coming this week.
I guess some of the.
Some of it came out last night.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Is that, just because they're going through the new system, they're always a little behind, or is that something that we could be involved with?
Usually what I've seen in the past is it seems to me that usually both the treasurer and county reports get released on the same day. It was on the, I believe the 13th that the county report, the treasurer's report was released. Usually they're released around the 7th or 9th of the month. That's typically what I see, but I do see various of the case, but it seems to be usually around the 9th of the month.
With you getting them by the night, is that sufficient time to actually get us what we need? Or I know it's a push always, but
It's a push, but I think now also that some of what I was doing in terms of what the administrative assistant position does, that's definitely related to my workload, so I think that it should be.
so I should look immediately to my left.
Yes, Lindsay is entering all the invoices instead of which I used to do.
And they do have a new staff, I believe, in the treasurer in the county, so it could be that that's why the delay this month, I'm not sure.
Okay, no motion. All right, our next Our next item is the public hearing, proposed library use policy and rules. I will move to open a public hearing for the purpose of hearing comment on proposed library use policy and rules. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Have any discussion? All in favor? Okay, any opposed? Okay, is there, so we have a public comment and the legal notice side of this. Abby, do you want to help us with this at all, or is this a,
If there's additional
Public
public
comment.
comment, then you put public comment, close the hearing, and then move on to the next item, which is for you to.
we have one,
We have
we have two pieces
we have
of
two
correspondence.
Written.
Right.
Correspondence. One from Mr. Gordon Brown.
Could you speak up just a little bit?
Sure, I have one email from Mr. Gordon Brown who wrote, "Dear board members, I support the new policies and rules. However, unless I was remiss, there is no stated or implied prohibition on the possession of deadly weapons. It would make me, and I suspect many others, very uncomfortable to be in the library with people who have a pistol on their hip or rifle leaning against their chair. Please include some applicable restrictions concerning firearms. Thank you, Gordon Brown." And then I have one from, yeah, read it, Karen Jordan, maybe. It says, "Just read the proposed public policy and wholeheartedly approve." So those are the two pieces of public policy.
The one on Zoom or.
And there's, does anybody on Zoom have any, Dale or Grace, do you have any comment? Abby, could you address,
I don't close public comment,
Yeah,
and then
we'll close it,
on the
right.
next item, I'll address.
so I have moved to close, so is that the motion to close the public hearing or a motion to, do I need a motion to close the public comment?
Close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing to take public comment on the proposed adoption of the new library use policy and rules. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So Abby, could you comment about what
The state law does not permit the library to regulate, doesn't permit counties or towns or municipalities. Anyone really except the state legislature to regulate firearms or weapons, for that matter, it's preempted. The citation is Wyoming statute 6-8-401. Firearms, weapon and ammunition regulation and prohibition by state. The first part is that Wyoming legislature finds the right to keep and bear arms a fundamental right. The Wyoming legislature affirms this right as a constitutionally protected right in every part of Wyoming. Basically, the state has preempted, so no one else can adopt regulations, and it very specifically says, except as authorized by two places that wouldn't apply. Here, you know, city, town, county, political subdivision, or any other entity can authorize, regulate, or prohibit the sale, transfer, purchase, delivery, taxation, manufacture, ownership, transportation, storage, use, carrying, or possession of firearms.
pretty clear?
Yeah.
Super.
There's no.
If the Wyoming legislature wants to allow local communities or libraries to regulate the possession of firearms on their property, then the Wyoming legislature needs to create a law. So everybody hold my breath about that. So the only exception are schools. That's one of the exceptions.
Yeah, I remember at the University of Wyoming, they suggested that they have a place for weapons.
Sort of a polite request, I imagine, not a regulation. And they might fall within that exception. I didn't look in detail at what the public education exception entails, but it would not.
Schools, I believe, are not automatically weapons are automatically the school districts. get
Yeah,
to
each-
decide.
Yeah, each district has.
Each district gets to choose.
But it's
So they've
within the
given that,
control of the people.
I believe, so they could theoretically say, oh, we're gonna let libraries and other public places choose within each community, but they haven't.
Thank you.
That's the we should bring up to our representatives. Just to kind of see how they would react. Go from there.
That would be an avenue.
That's very diplomatic.
It really seemed like that would be a good place. Am I wrong in the way I don't remember them allowing them to county commissioner meetings or anything?
There are specific rules about certain public meetings. But they also,
My understanding is you can carry a firearm into some of the OCC meetings.
yeah,
You said choose.
My experience, having worked in Washington State, the library, the state Supreme Court said libraries could not ban weapons. And if you look at the restrictions list, they put schools, they might put
courthouses.
courthouses, things like that, the libraries have been excluded. States.
The federal rule, maybe Department of Service doesn't allow. Mission officers to carry, people, the public. Can carry weapons inside.
So you can't carry into the Craig Thomas Discovery Center, I mean, technically.
You can carry in parking space, you just can't fire.
And when I talked about this, there's an argument in some cases where a government, if it wasn't regulating the firearm, but it was prohibiting them because they were the property owner, that might fly. That to me is also potentially an invitation for someone to challenge that. And it wouldn't apply here because this board doesn't own the property. The county does. And there was also, Kip and I discussed that even, you looked at not firearms, weapons, knives. Well, in Wyoming, a lot of men and some women have, their Leatherman and their buck knives on them. Women have mace. So, how do you enforce or regulate that? And really the concern, even under, conservative Second Amendment values of being able to walk into a library, pack and heat, is the behavior, not necessarily the act of just having it on your body. It's what I would consider French. Right, and I do think there's language in your new rules that talks about behavior that makes people uncomfortable or that is threatening and interferes with other people's use of the library that could be used to address any situation that might arise.
That's.
And I don't feel there's more of a policy decision that taking a stand on something like that. I mean, I noticed, did you take the signs down?
No.
I noticed the signs came down.
Sorry, what signs?
There have been signs traditionally that bring their weapons, and it has a picture of a gun with a line through it. And I noticed when I came in today, that came down. Because the unfortunate reality is too, is when you take a stand or you put signs like that up, it's an invitation, right? So it might not be an issue until you decide to make an issue, and then all of a sudden, someone who feels very differently, takes up the challenge. So it's always a good idea to avoid that. So,
I want to thank you and Kip, and this is kind of Kip's matter, but it's not work with me. This set, it's a huge amount.
this that was a bit more. We were very particular about the words used, and in addition to the work that the staff did, and then I did some, editing. And then we met for what? It ended up being 2 hours. So it was very productive because staff could share with me what the issues were they were trying to address, and then I could suggest language that was a little more precise than bringing those. I always think the skills of multiple people, you know, I couldn't draft rules without their context and, you know, my language skills, you know, helped accomplish what they want, so.
What's, this is commensurate.
I think this was probably the hardest policy we're going to have.
So I thank you for your patience.
Um,
It only took a year,
it's, well, and you're well spent. Plus you have other things to do.
yes.
Our next item is adoption of proposed library use policy and rules, final staff.
Very brief, based on all of the work that all of us have done on this policy, based on the public comments. In support of this, aside from the weapons piece, staff does recommend that the board adopt this policy. I think it's long overdue.
So I will move to approve the resolution to adopt the library use policy and rules as presented in the staff report with an effective date of December 16th, 2022. Do I have a second to that motion? Second. Any further discussion?
I have one question, which is when you ask for public comment, is there guidance for the library staff that you typically respond to those comments individually, or it's not a two-way street? Just take them in and consider them.
One didn't have a means to contact
Yeah.
the other one. They did respond and said, thank you for your comment. It will be read at the public hearing. You're welcome to attend the meeting. We'll fully discuss it, but there's no back and forth.
In general, we can't do policy or comment responses between our meetings, even from,
Right.
other than saying, thank you for your comment, we have received it, and that will be part of the public record for the next meeting.
Thanks.
Um,
And I'll have a number of resolutions that needs. Our meeting today.
So the next item is public hearing, repealing unnecessary policies. I would move to open a public hearing for the purpose of hearing comment on the proposed rescission and repeal of 7 previously adopted library policies that are no longer relevant relative to our new policies and procedures. So is there public comment? Yes, Grace. Oh, sorry. Yes, Dale. Excuse me.
Yes, thank you. I would like to know in terms of the records retention policy, and I did read the report which said that the county is now keeping quite a few of the records, and I have a couple of concerns. I'd like to know exactly what they are keeping, and I guess I'd like to make a comment about what they're not keeping. So if somebody could tell me exactly what it is, I'm assuming the financials. I don't know much past that.
The county maintains the official personnel file on every employee, and they maintain our financial
Okay,
accounting records and our funds management.
okay. So any sorts of, and I'm trying to get at a bigger issue here. Any sort of information such as individual department information, the director's reports, the annual reports, all those kinds of things. Are we keeping those these days, or what happens to those, Kip?
Yes, we do keep all of the minutes. The records of our meetings are currently attached to each agenda, which are available. We do keep a printed copy of the minutes. We don't keep the attached documents in those records, just the minutes and the resolutions.
Okay, my concern is, and this is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Annual reports to the state and such are on file with the state, patron records, all of that kind of information belongs to the state library. So our obligation under the state's retention policy is not relevant to us.
Okay. My concern about this is that, and it's been a constant problem in terms of, for the staff, I believe, as time has gone on, to try to determine what to keep. In other words, in terms of a historical record, as much as a legal requirement. And it has led to usually too much, or in some cases, maybe too little. And I guess my concern is that, especially in a digital age where it should be easier to get to the material, but the very amount of it sometimes is daunting, that there's not going to be any historical record. And choosing what's important in that is the real hard part. And I'm not even sure it should be a policy. It might need to be an internal working document. But I do know that if without any guidelines about what's important to keep and what isn't, we do lose an enormous amount of history that we would have liked to have. And we wind up with storage sheds completely full of, in the past anyway, pieces of paper, which I'm sure are long gone now, but it serves to illustrate the issue that I do believe there are things we are doing that are worthy of being saved, in terms of the record. And I think some guidance on how to do that and what would be extremely helpful. And I realize it doesn't have anything to do with the legal requirements, but this policy change has made me think about it once again in terms of, is there a way to manage it maybe a little better? Thank you.
Thank you, Dale, for your comment.
I
Duly noted.
would say I don't necessarily disagree with any of that, Dale. I think history is important to maintain. This specific policy only refers to the legal things like personnel and financial. Those are not our obligation any longer. So that's why this specific policy.
Right.
But we probably do need to look at the other sort of internal practices.
Thank you.
And but unrelated, but I need your signature on a resolution that was passed before you left the board.
Oh, okay.
So if you can stop by at some point, I'll have it in my office.
Okay, I'll do it.
Peter was on vacation, and so we just didn't get it signed.
That's okay.
Thank you, Dale. Grace, do you have any comments, or anybody else have a public comment? Hearing none, I move to close the public hearing to take public comment on the proposed rescission and repeal of 7 previously adopted library policies. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, repeal unnecessary policies. Brief staff report. I
Staff
move.
recommends that we repeal these 7 policies.
Thank you. I will move to rescind and repeal the previously adopted suspension of library privileges, safety in the workplace solicitation, service animal behavior, record retention, and investment policies, as these policies have been or will be replaced by newer policies and or are no longer relevant to the work of the library or the board with an effective date of December 15th, 2022.
Can you add drug-free library?
Drug-free library policy is a long list. I apologize.
It's on the agenda.
It is on the, yes, I'm just reading the, yes.
Staff, you're reading the motion.
I'm reading the motion. And the effective date is yesterday. Or is today? Excuse me. Today. Okay. That's my motion, I guess. You want me to read it again, or are we okay?
No.
We have a second. Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, moving on. Proposed policies, a lot of policies in the first half of our meeting today. Unattended children and vulnerable adults policy, community building bulletin board and display policy, and library gallery exhibit policy. May we have a little staff report, please?
You may, and I will start with the easy two first, which is the community bulletin board display policy and the library gallery exhibit policy. Currently, we do have a display policy. It is rather fragmented in the way it's written. It assigns tasks to departments that don't necessarily really exist in the library, or positions that don't exist any longer. So we just wanted to have a very short, clear policy that reflects what we do today. And so that's what you see in that community bulletin board policy. We have never had, that I'm aware of, art gallery exhibit policy. And just to cover all bases, and, you know, we wanted place, and so we took what Leah currently does as practice and converted that into a policy. And Abigail, has any thoughts on either of those two policies?
No.
Okay.
Grace, there's not going to be public comment right now. Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Kip. Can I back up a little bit to the unattended children and vulnerable adults?
Grace, we're not there yet.
We haven't talked about
We haven't
it yet.
talked about it yet.
Oh, I thought you were below it. Sorry.
We did the easy two first.
He did the easy
Right.
two first, and we're not that public comment.
Okay.
So we currently have a library policy for children, I believe it's called. It really only establishes that a child under 8 years of age or younger must be accompanied by someone 12 years of age or older, and that's sort of about the extent of the policy. And it's pre-COVID at least led to a lot of the youth wing sort of becoming a de facto daycare with 80, 90 children, mostly unsupervised. So we wanted to create a policy that would sort of control the environment, allow staff to control the environment a little more. And in the same measure, we wanted to include vulnerable adults because they're often in the same situation as an unattended child. So we wanted to just be inclusive of the policy for both of those. So we did establish, kept the age of 8 and 12. The big piece that we added was that should there be class visits or groups that come to the library, that for every 10 children, there needs to be one adult or one chaperone for those 10 kids. There's been questions about bringing 30 kids and one para professional with the 30 kids, and there's no way one person can supervise 30 children. So we looked at other libraries' policies, and the ratio tends to be about 1 to 10. So that's what we did. And that's sort of the summary. I don't know if Abigail, this one she spent a little more time with. Mostly just cleaning up our language, I think, and making it more clear. But I don't know if you have any questions.
Guidelines to rules.
No. Yes.
I don't have a comment. Thank you very much.
Questions.
Yeah, Grace, did you have I mean, we're not taking public comment on this yet, but would you like?
Okay.
No? Okay.
I'll do it in public comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You guys have any more questions? Then I would move to give notice and open the new proposed unattended children and vulnerable adults policy, community bulletin board and display policy, and library gallery exhibit policy for a 45-day public comment period. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Do I have any further discussion?
I do have a question for Abigail. We had discussed that 2 of those may not need to go through the 45-day review, or
Let's go
let's
ahead,
just do it. Okay,
just to be consistent.
okay.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Christmas Eve hours. We seem to address this earlier, and I think we're addressing it for a good reason again.
Yeah. Yes, in October, I guess the board took our staff recommendation to close the library for half a day on Christmas Eve. As we've gotten closer to Christmas Eve, and it just started to bother me that we were open at all, so I did a quick survey of Wyoming libraries, and I didn't find any that were actually going to be open on Christmas Eve. Because it's Saturday, it's probably going to be pretty dead anyway. So I would like to recommend, I guess staff recommends that we revisit that decision and close for the full day. And give the staff that's scheduled to work paid administrative.
I think it's very
Good.
so. Since I've been hogging all the motions.
So I make a motion that I got it. I move to close Teton County Library for Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2022, with full-time employees who are scheduled to work that day receiving 8 hours of paid administrative leave.
I will second that motion. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes.
5 people scheduled to work will be.
And thank them. Director's report.
Sure. This will be the first director's report, I think, in my tenure where I don't really have to talk about vacancies.
Yay.
We do have a handful, 2 or 3 part-time library assistant positions that are still vacant. However, all other positions. So we're excited about that. That's the staffing update. The only other thing that really should be pulled out, I guess, is the curative kiosk that's sitting out here. It closed, I believe, at the end of October, and it was scheduled to be removed in early November. Weather and other curative issues prevented it from being removed. And so then they came back to us and they would like to gift it to the library. And we, management team, Stella and Rick and I spent a lot of time thinking, well, what can we do with this kiosk? And one of the things that kept coming to the front was, having gone through all this strategic planning process, that people want library service outside of Jackson. While it's not very big, it measures 8 by 8, I believe. It would be something that could be used for holds pickup, could have a very small popular collection housed inside, and it could have a book return slot in it. So we start thinking, where can we do that? And we thought that Hoback, a little tricky there. We thought someplace north, and then we kind of landed on the Stilson block as an ideal location, pulling people from Wilson, from the Village, West Bank, and it just appears it would be a great site. However, along with The 22 construction, Stilson is going to be under construction for the next 2 years, and the county currently doesn't own Stilson yet. So it's not necessarily a location that we can go to now, at least. So then the old Wilson Schoolhouse came up as a possible location, and they were very excited about the idea. But the more they thought about it, it doesn't really architecturally, historically fit with their site. They didn't think it'd be very pretty in wedding pictures that are being taken out on the lawn and things like that. So they suggested Owen Bircher Park. And so I've reached out to Steve Ashworth, Director of Park and Rec, and he's very much interested in partnering with us on that. That's as far as we've gone with the idea. We have a place, we have a concept. We don't know, what the cost would be yet to retrofit the thing. We'd have to install electricity and some sort of Wi-Fi or internet connection so that people will be able to check books out and scan their library card to open the door, things like that. It would be a secure environment. So what the first step would be is, do you think that's a good idea? And if you do, or we might have other ideas, you need to decide if you want to accept the gift. And in talking to Abigail, Curative would need to write us a letter. The board would need to say, yes, we'd like to do that, and then we will take it to the commissioners who can accept property. And so we would need to make a good case of why the county should accept this gift.
So I have a question about this. What is the downside of accepting the gift and ultimately deciding that we cannot find a solution for where to put it?
We could offer it to other county departments. There might be another use for it. Maybe, I don't know, looks like something you could probably use at fairgrounds for something.
Housing.
Well, no, but
I
one of my concerns is ultimately, if you're out there, even with a library card access, it's enough of a space so that somebody enthusiastically might have a little. So use our library card to access it and have a little party, have a little whatever. I just am trying to think through some of the concerns we might have. I know in other cities, I
have toured facility that is self-service in Vancouver, Washington. I've reached out to them recently to talk about it a little bit more. They have a second location now, and they've yet to ever have any issues. The question when I took the initial tour a few years ago was, what do teens do after school? Are they, and because we want to blame teens for everything, I guess. And they said when they do access it, they come in, they get their books. Theirs is a little larger, so the kids stay and do homework on the computer. They've not had any vandalism or anything like that. That said, that doesn't mean it wouldn't happen.
And
sorry.
it's contemplated that if you only have access with your library card, and that would then identify the person who accessed it at
Yes.
a particular time.
Yeah.
I think it has been a problem, like in Stilson and Brest area there.
Right.
In the discussions, because Steve knows about the design out there, is it contemplated to be very close to the new transit center? So while you're waiting for the bus, you can go in and get a book. No, the future.
In the future,
Very tight, but it's still.
having had a brief discussion with Sarah Mann
Yeah.
and Alyssa Watkins, they both thought it was a good idea to have it at Stilson. And it would be adjacent to
To the
the
transit.
transit station.
Since
But that's, that's 2
Well,
years away. I
since
don't.
Tilton has absorbed most of my life. I'll mention it to the design team.
Well, there are cameras on that, still some.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be my other thing, which is if you happen to have multiple users on one day and can't identify who did what to whom, having I mean, cameras are ubiquitous these days, but I think having a camera would be. Just
And are the ones in Vancouver, are they in a remote location like a park? Or are they closer to other things?
Theirs are actually more of a building size, so one is, I don't know exactly where the new one is, but the other one that I've been to is sort of a small village center. There's a school that's about 2 blocks away, and there's a general store. It's sort of just a bump in the road, and they took it, I think it's an old schoolhouse that has sort of one large room and a little area for staff to come in and do things.
Yeah, I don't know where in Owen Berkshire, but I think there is a little bit more risk if there isn't the feeling that there's some oversight or maybe even some. I love the idea and I think it's worth a try.
I wondered, the worst case scenario, none of these work out. Seems like it could be used for storage. That's always the issue.
If the gift were accepted by the commissioners, it didn't work out. It is theirs, so they could decide also to go somewhere else.
We also have to check the deed for the donation of Owen Berkshire to make sure that there aren't any limitations.
Abigail, do we need to, there's a suggested motion inside of this, what do we need to do with that, or is that up to the?
I think it would be appropriate if you would like him to proceed
Yeah.
with exploring. I think the motion's written just to pursue.
Right, it's
And
very
then
general.
I think before any, if an offer letter came in, maybe we would bring it to you first to say yes. And then if you said yes, then we would then go to the commissioners to say yes. So there would be another opportunity to make a final decision. Is that
That's what I-
a correct
Yes.
characterization?
And what's your time frame? Is it the next couple, is it the next, before our next board meeting?
Well, before the meeting, I listened to my voicemail. I have a message from Rachel Wheeler at Public Health, who worked directly with Curative. She wanted to know what was happening with that. So, and I think Curative wants to probably get it off of their books.
Unless they want to open it again, because I keep.
I guess we're-
Everybody's gonna be shipping masks again, and their masks get back east again, so.
Let's give you the ultimate flexibility that we can.
I would guess we would come back in January and with a gift letter, and then you can decide. It's going to sit there a little longer than maybe we thought.
Some Christmas decorations.
Road and Levy
Holiday.
has offered to store it down at Adams Canyon for us. So once we accept the gift, if we go that way, it'll be moved down there until we figure out what the
Short and long term plan.
yeah.
Well, I will move that the library begin the process of accepting the gift of the former Curative COVID testing kiosk. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's passed.
That's all I have in my director's report.
Beautiful. Man,
So a couple of announcements from Foundation. You all saw the report, but I'd like to point out a couple of things that I think are important. We just had our 28th annual library benefit on November 11th and are really pleased with how it turned out. There were a few concerns going in that we moved the date up 3 weeks into November, and folks were worried about if that might impact attendance or not. And it did not. And in fact, what we were hoping for is a little bit of a smaller group event. And we got a lot of great feedback from folks who said that last year's event had about 250 attendees, felt like a really nice event. So we were hoping to be around there. So we opted for 350 was our goal for attendees. We came just slightly under. And noting that we had reduced our capacity about 150 guests, we were just about really $500 shy of our fundraising goal. So we were really pleased that we raised about $143,600. And we owe that in large part to the fact that our sponsors really came through and supported this event, gave up some of their complimentary tickets so that we could provide those for guests who wanted to attend, and that helped with our revenue goals and fundraising goals. So we're really pleased with that. We're thankful to all the library staff, to Lisa for donating their time and being wonderful greeters and welcoming our guests at the start of the event. And we're looking forward to next year. We anticipate doing this again in November. And we're talking about ways that we can incorporate maybe the younger professional crowd. We did raise our prices slightly this year. The entry guest ticket was $250. I know in years past, when we were at 500 capacity, that ticket price was $165. And so we would like to consider ways that we can incorporate maybe a younger professional have a junior entry ticket price. We're looking at all kinds of fun things for 2023, including having programs for children, because a lot of local folks stay the night for the weekend and bring their families. So we're looking at ways to make it, kind of extend the party into the weekend for families and children. So looking forward to that. Another thing I'd like to share with you is the Library Foundation has started the strategic planning process. We had our official kickoff meeting yesterday with Library Strategies Consulting. We're grateful to Kip, who volunteered to be a part of our committee. Lori Clark Harrison of the Friends Board also volunteered. And then we have 3 board members who are serving on the steering committee and myself. And we had a really productive meeting yesterday. I felt a lot of wonderful dialogue, and our process is going to mirror your process. The library's process, we are using the same rapid results strategic planning process, although we are having facilitators who created that process to be our consultants and facilitators. We also are excited. We have a brand new board member, Alex McDougall, has joined the Library Foundation board. And so now we have what we consider a good size. Our optimum size that we've discussed is our 11 members. Right now we're at 10. I think folks feel really comfortable with that, but we may add an additional board member. And the last item I'd like to share with you is that we have requested the board approve the foundation's request to serve alcohol at an after-hours event on Friday, January 13, 2023. We would like to host a social invitation-only event for Annie Fenn. She's a local author who just published a cookbook, Brain Health Kitchen, about foods and recipes that help to create a strong brain. And so we are anticipating about 60 guests for this event, and we are hoping for it to be relatively small, intimate, with her doing a wonderful talk and sharing about her recipes. And we don't anticipate it being catered. We are looking forward to perhaps having folks prepare some of the dishes from her cookbook and bring them kind of like a potluck style. So it's really a social event, a way to bring folks again into the library and to learn more about what the foundation does.
And that, so when you talk with your facilitators on the strategic planning process, what is their time frame? I know what our commitment is. When do you anticipate your process being present something to you?
So we would anticipate having a strategic plan draft in April to present to the board. So right now we're going through the process right now is looking at a lot of the data. So they do an in-depth look at the foundation's financials, what we supported the library, our annual reports, all of these things, right? Learning about programs like the housing support program, which they were pretty impressed that that's such a need here in Jackson, and the foundation is taking that on. We're gonna move into the retreat planning, the survey production, similar to what you had, and then we're adding one-on-one interviews with primary stakeholders. And then we move into an assessment of that data, drafting the goals and objectives, and then having a draft plan.
Chip, could you remind us of what our alcohol policy is for county buildings? Well, either one, the county buildings and the library specifically.
For the library specifically, the library board can approve 2 alcohol events per calendar year. The foundation did have one last July. So they had one in this current year.
Is it calendar or fiscal?
It's calendar.
Sure, but I'm not, does it even say? I just say year.
Maybe it just says 2 per year.
Wow. Wait, I thought you put the exact language of the.
I put the exact language in my letter, in your letter.
The use of
No, I'm surprised. I'm reading that.
per year.
2 per year.
2 per
So,
year.
Okay.
I don't know how we could plan.
purposes of this, right now, let's say.
So we are allowed to do 2 per year. We've only done 1 in this calendar year and fiscal year.
Yes.
Super. So,
I move that, we allow this to, happen the second time. We don't want to, underuse our policy.
Let's fill that to a year.
is there a second to that motion?
A second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good. Friends report, and I don't see anybody from the friends on the call. It's self-evident. I mean, I said we would include the board packet. And okay, so we move forward to committee reports.
The housing task force, just a quick update. We did have housing fair for library staff. I believe it was on November 16th, where we had the representatives from the 3 housing organizations in town come and talk to staff, talk about programs, how to apply, how to get on the list, waiting list for housing. Very well received by the staff. I think in the end, the processes are easier than one might. It's not as complicated as one might think it is. There was interest when at the county directors meeting when I went. There was some interest in with the library, either invite the county staff to come to that event or a future event. And we said we wanted to give this one a sort of trial run and see how it went. And it did go quite well. So we could do it again. We would open it up and invite us. And related to housing, the commissioners just approved new HR policies for starting in January. And one of the policy changes was to employees living in county housing. The current limit for those people are 3 years in county housing. As long as if there's competing demand, of course, the competing demand obviously you stay longer, but of course, there's always going to be competing demand. So the policy committee recommended that 3 years be changed to 6 years, and the commissioners did approve that last week. So
Which is a very, since we have one of the commissioners here, thank you, Mark. That was a very, very good motion.
Sure, yeah, we have a really good policy, and we put their heads together, spend significant amount of time on it, so they will acknowledge that. And they came to us with a lot of great suggestions.
Happy to say the library had 2 representatives on policy committee, so we were active partners.
Thank you. We met as a tri-board. Lori Clark Erickson from the Friends hosted us 2 weeks ago Thursday, I believe. And I think the general conclusion, having done this now for about a year and a quarter, is that this has been a very, very helpful way to foster communication between the 3 organizations. It's very informal. No minutes are taken. We discussed basically all of the things that were on the current quarter plate for each organization. And generally, each organization brings an additional person from their board with them. And I think everybody's in agreement that continuing this process is something that's very helpful, much like the reports to the BOCC on a quarterly basis, and just keeping all of the channels of communication open and making sure everybody's hearing the same thing and what's important. With you guys, several of you were there. Want to add anything to that?
Is it always the chair of each board and the other one?
It has been that.
I'm 100%. We appreciate the candid dialogue and the relationship.
Moving along, strategic, this might take a little bit longer. Strategic plan update. This has been a significant portion of the work last, well, really since last spring. And Kip, why don't you bring us up to date?
Okay, I guess I'll start with mission, vision, and value statements. Well, no, I'll back up. The strategic planning steering committee received from the facilitators of the process a suggested, after they did our community retreat, some of the data from the survey, they came back to us and presented us with I think it was 6 goals, possibly, and they had sort of hung some possible objectives on those goals. We, as the steering committee, started digging into those goals. Their recommendation was to come up, maybe settle on 3 or 4 goals out of the 6. So we started looking at the goals and felt that out of the 6 they gave us, there was a lot of overlap. There maybe were only 3 or 4 there out of the 6. And then as we started trying to write what those goals might look like, in our own words, we started discovering that what they had proposed to us were probably more, I guess, observations rather than actually based on the data. And I'm happy to say we have a great data analyst on the steering committee, Diana, who really gave up, I think, a lot of weekend hours, but she says it's fun. Digging through the data. I know Grace also spent a lot of time looking at some of the technology aspects of the data from that. And we started to feel like what had been proposed to us really didn't go. They weren't the goals we wanted to set. Their recommendations are still represented in the goals here. But we thought they were more objectives or not quite as broad or as defined as we wanted them to be. So we spent a lot of time trying to decide what those, based on what the committee gave, the facilitators gave us, they were all external facing goals, community based. There was nothing for the organization itself. So we thought it was very important that we added an organizational goal as well. So we came up with 4 goals for the library going forward that we hoping you agree with us. That broadly our community spaces, lifelong learning, and then organizational excellence. And I think those of you who were part of the retreat or have heard other updates, you probably know that those first three are very representative of what the community has said they would like to see the library doing going forward. So we have before you what the 4 goals look like. We spent a lot of time wordsmithing and trying to, I guess, massage them to fit what the community said, what we thought we were capable of doing in the next 3 to 5 years as we look. We talked about maybe this being a 3-year plan. It's probably closer to a 5-year plan. So we have those before you. I hope you've read them. And I welcome your feedback on those. Based on the goals, the data, observations, even, we also came up with a new mission and vision statements for the library. And I think you'll see when you read through those that those very much mirror the goals that we've set. So yes, we want.
The only thing I would add to that is there has been a steering committee of the strategic planning that has met really since June, and in order to, well, when we realized that anything that was going to be produced needed to have an impact on our budgeting process for this upcoming fiscal year, we really needed to sit down and get these hashed out. What you see before you hashed out in a very concentrated way. And so we actually created a very small subgroup of this steering committee. And that really hammered out these brought up to the steering committee. I think have the opportunity to make comments on it, and Kip has incorporated some of those comments in this, and there's some others that are kind of that are going to be massaged a little bit more and more in the commentary around these, as opposed to the goals and objectives themselves.
Yes, it's presented here is the format or anything. We'll have to figure that out. That's the format for the strategic.
One of the important things about today, I'm sorry, is to get this in front of. I've been on the steering committee and on the subcommittee, so I have a bias. So I really, this is to position us today. It's acceptable framework for you all, for us to really finalize this, to be able to present at the January board meeting, so that we can then give staff the approval to go ahead and start to incorporate specifics of these into our next year's budget, which starts right after our board meeting in January. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think that's. And I would just add that the larger committee, the feedback has been very positive on the work that this smaller subcommittee did. So there's.
And I'd like to ask Grace, who's part of both the steering committee and the steering subcommittee that we have, if she would like to add anything to what's been said.
Thank you. I would just say that I think it's really good that it's community driven. And my only concern is some of it is big. And I hope we have the energy and the ability to achieve some of this. It is big. But it's good. And I just want to share with this group, because it's such a significant part of our future, that I had an enlightening experience when I came to really understand digital literacy. And and it is an extension of literacy. Think about it. Digital literacy is every day using digital devices and technology and information. It is an extension of literacy, which is the library's primary role. And our community, in many different ways, asked for help with digital literacy. And I share that because I don't know how many of you are already on board with all of that. I know the library people are, but when I mentioned digital literacy, people and explain what it is, they said, oh yes, that is what we need. So I just wanted to take this minute to share that. And otherwise, I'm really pleased with all of the process and the outcome. And I know we have a ways to go, and the work to get this put forward into the budget and into the plans is huge. And thank you, Stella, Kip, Library, for doing all of this. That's all. Thank you for giving me a minute, Peter.
It's really nice. I like the 4 headings and the goals and objectives. And then in addition to staff working on the budget to implement the objectives, do you do like an annual work plan for like what you can do under each objective?
Yeah, that's our next, once we get
Right.
your blessing today, that we're on the right track. We're gonna have to start right away, coming up with what these look like this kind of.
One of the things, and I would echo what you said, and we took the roughly 1,000 surveys and all of the notes from the retreats, and staff retreats, and all the meetings that we've had, and she codified it in Excel spreadsheets, which is not necessarily something that would be on the top of the list of things that you would want to do, but she did a great job. And it made the data mining and summary back up. That was very inclusive. I would say that finding these 2 metrics are very important in terms of measurable outcomes. And one of the things that the steering committee has seen how other institutions, libraries as well, can message that to the community in a very effective way. And we're looking at lots of different examples to put something that's very understandable, but also 128-page tone, literally a couple of pages max, but to show on one page to the community. Here are those objectives. Here are the milestones that are in there. Here's how you can measure if we're successful or not. So that's something that we're all going to be working on. You just need an informal blessing of that.
I think that, yeah, there's no motion to make today, so it's just.
We look forward to seeing the final product in the next board meeting. Thank you. Thank you for everybody.
Very soon.
Matters from board members, library staff, and supporting organization. I have one, our board bylaws. I think since we have just spent a lot of time over the last year looking at policies for the library, I actually think it's a very healthy thing to do, to look through all of our board bylaws and see whether they are up to date and current with current practice in the library world. I think there have been several things that have been happening that we've all talked about in terms of Campbell County and some of the challenges they face and some of the challenges the libraries have faced all over the country, where looking at our bylaws to firm up, how we as, what are important to the board, and how we should operate. So I would love to have us open up a process with the board will to look at our bylaws over the course of the next few months and see what we can, what changes might, what, next few months. And see what might be changed. And maybe that's nothing, but maybe there'll be some points.
Need a motion.
Well, I would like to ask that we start a subcommittee to work on that. And I would love a motion to create a subcommittee to work on that. And then we can talk about who might be on that.
All right, I move to establish a subcommittee to review and potentially update the board bylaws and policies, bylaws.
I will second that motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hey. Lisa, could I ask?
You're looking at me, I know you are. Yeah, of course.
JD over here.
I know, is the show? Yeah, I think I have to do.
Could I propose for you to be a part of that, or is that maybe a two, so you have an official board meeting with the third person? That'd be super. Thank you so much.
And what are our first steps? Just to like go through it with our two brains and if things.
I would suggest that you two meet with Kim initially and sort of figure out what is going on in the library world these days, and then it would lead to probably a conversation with Abigail and you guys.
I actually wouldn't mind being a part of an initial conversation. It'll help provide context. No, context helps.
And that, we want to try to do that in January, have that first meeting or?
I would suggest you rely on Kim telling you when between the strategic planning and the end of the strategic planning proposal and the beginning of the budget. But that's up to you guys.
We'll just wait to hear from you then, when it works for you. Okay, thanks.
After the first of the year, how's that?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you both. Payment of library matters.
Oh, do you need a motion? Just language. I move to approve the payment of library vouchers.
I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Well, I didn't ask for discussion, sorry. Any opposed? Thank you. I will move to adjourn the meeting of the library. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all very much. Thank you, Dale. It's nice to see you.